When I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Not the remakes, I'm talking about the original one with Gene Wilder. And it wasn't so much that it was a rags to riches story, although that was certainly appealing, or it wasn't even the fact that it was Charlie having the opportunity to own a chocolate factory and having all the candy he wanted every day after that. That was certainly exciting, but for me, the best part of the movie was when Charlie is walking down the street and he's kind of dejected because he knows that he's never going to get one of those Wonka bars that has the possibility of having a golden ticket in it. And he looks down at the ground, his eyes down on the ground, and he sees the sewer grate with a coin kind of showing out of the bottom of that grate. And that coin was this exact coin. Well, one just like it. And that's what really started Charlie on his journey, right? It wasn't so much finding the golden ticket. In fact, he would not have been able to get the golden ticket if he hadn't found this great big chunky silver coin in that gutter and then used that to buy the golden ticket candy bar that he eventually got. This is a crown. This is a big silver coin called a crown, and that's what this video is about. If you are new to the channel, my name is White Cross, and I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you are one of my returning subscribers, thank you guys as always. The fact that you're here with me again today means that you continue to find these videos entertaining and informing, and I love that. It makes me want to keep on making videos for you, and I really genuinely appreciate you being with me here today. So this video is about crowns. And if you are new to the channel, I like to begin each of my videos with a disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals for the last 30 or 40 years. In the case of some of these, and with that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka movie, we're talking closer to 50 years. And I also like to begin each of my videos with a simple definition that we can work back into the subject matter. And there is no better definition for this subject matter than crowns. What are crowns? These are crowns. Crowns are the big silver coin that represented the most commonly exchanged amount of currency in whatever the vehicle was that a particular country issued, going back to the late 1400s and really all the way through about the 1930s or 1940s. And a crown represented the most commonly transacted amount. So it didn't necessarily have to be a one. For example, this is a United States Morgan silver dollar. Hard for me to think of this as a crown, but it really is. This is what other countries would think of as the American crown. This was our crown. This was $1. But other countries used other increments, whatever the most commonly exchanged amount was. And a crown was the biggest silver coin that was issued by those countries. Mostly, these crowns are about 25 grams in weight, and usually they are around 90% silver or 900 fine silver. And they were issued by pretty much every country that had the ability to do it around the world for hundreds of years. These were the workhorse silver transaction. Again, these are the main pieces. We've talked before about subsidiary pieces. Those would be in the instance of the United States, the dime, the quarter, the half dollar. They all support the primary coin, and these would be those primary coin pieces, the equivalent of our United States silver dollar. So what is a crown? It kind of depends on where you're from. Like I said, I'm from the United States of America, so it's hard for me to think of a Morgan dollar as being a crown, but that's really what it is. If you're from the UK, your crown might be the actual crown. That's what these coins were called, their version of it. This is a Queen Victoria crown, and you can see this one, beautiful, large, big silver coin, literally called a crown in this instance. These pieces were often called crowns because they usually had the head of the sovereign of the country on them, the crown being the representation of the royalty, the monarch, the king, the queen. So these were issued by pretty much every country around the world. And some examples that we've talked about in the past would include the Joachimsthaler, that kind of northern German big silver coin from the late 1400s, and these really were kind of the first of the crowns. Before that, silver coins tended to be somewhat small. Their purity tended to be a little bit low. and the Joachimsthaler and the thalers that followed shortly thereafter. Remember once again that thaler, Thaler, is the root word for our dollar. It's where we get the word dollar from. They were larger coins, close to a troy ounce, somewhere right in that 25 to 30 gram size, and they were usually high purity, somewhere around 90% pure. We've talked about this example before. This is a crown from 1662. This features the wild man. He was a common allegorical symbol on German pieces of this period of time. He's from Lüneburg and Gallenberg in Germany. This is just a really cool example. And again, this one dates all the way back to 1662. So this was something that was commonly used around most countries of the world. Here it is compared to a US silver dollar, so you get the size comparison. Roughly the same size, roughly the same purity, roughly the same weight. Crowns. So the earliest ones, Joachimsthalers, then we had that example of the wild man thaler from Germany I just showed you. I've talked before many times about the 8 reale. That is a crown. This is a Spanish piece, a European piece, issued by the Spanish government. This one struck actually in Mexico City. I believe you can see the MO mint mark right there. So this one, even though it is a Spanish crown with King Charles IV on it, was actually minted in the New World, in the Spanish colonies of New Spain in Mexico City. Examples of kind of earlier crowns, but pretty much every country that could put out their own crown during this period of time. Again, late 1400s, early 1500s, all the way up until 1920s, 1930s. European examples, we talked before about the English ones. There's the Spanish one. There's another French. This is French. There's a German one. There are Italian examples that you see here before you. So pretty much every European country, but also just about every other region of the world. In Asia, in China, there were the Yang Shikai dollars, those fat man dollars. Those would be considered crowns. Also the slightly later Chiang Kai-shek junk dollars, called junk dollars because they had a junk boat on the back of them. Example of Chinese crowns. Japan and Korea both put out crowns. Vietnam put out crowns. Lots of countries in that part of the world loved silver, as we've talked about before, so those aren't that unusual to find. Middle Eastern, there's a Middle Eastern example here. This is actually an Egyptian crown. This is from the Ottoman Empire, that dissolved sometime around the First World War, but an example of a piece that was made in Egypt in this period of time. This dates from roughly 1913. India was a producer of crowns too, sometimes. This is kind of an unusual rupee from Jaipur, and it's a little bit thinner, but you can see it's roughly the size of a United States silver dollar. So I would include something like this as a crown also. So lots of examples of them from all around the world, including the United States. Let's call our silver dollars a crown also. We don't have a monarch, but they certainly are a powerful physical representation of America's monetary strength. Why would you want crowns? They're cool, right? Looking at this group here, it hopefully gets your heart pumping and the blood flowing in your veins, and you think, wow, that's it. This is what we value silver for. It was money. This stuff was actually spent, some of these going back hundreds of years. So you get a whole bunch of really fun things when you buy crowns. They are inexpensive, they are plentiful, and they are collectible, among many other things. And I'm going to talk about each one of those subjects really quickly. In terms of expense, especially after seeing the ridiculous premiums that we've been paying on silver pieces for the last 3 or 4 years, some of those premiums on 1 ounce traditional 999 silver coins like the Eagle, the Maple, the Britannia have gone up to $10, $15, $20 per coin. And one of the nice things about these is that as long as you're talking about average circulated pieces like the ones you see here before you, the premiums on these tend to be quite small. Maybe $3, maybe $5. Some of the nicer ones a little bit more expensive, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But for the most part, they are relatively inexpensive. They're plentiful. Like I said, almost every country that could put these out, put them out. Now, they have suffered from mass meltings. We've seen before that during periods of silver run-ups like the Hunt brothers in the 1980s, and even before that, and even a little bit later than that, a lot of these found their way into the crucibles and were melted. But so many of them were made that there are still quite a few of them out there. They are plentiful. They are collectible. lots of different ways that you can collect these. So if you have a particular year or a century that you like, the year the Titanic sank or the beginning of the Civil War, if there's some year that really means a lot to you, chances are you can find crowns that have that period of time, that year on them. You can go by country. And I know a lot of people in the United States have ancestry from other parts of the world. If you've got German ancestors, maybe you would be interested in picking up pieces that are from Germany. If you've got French ancestors, you've got pieces from France here that you can take a look at. If you've got English ancestors, again, you've got the English pieces here, Spanish, again, the Indian pieces, the Mexican pieces. They're all crowns and they are all out there. They're all available. And that's a fun way to collect them also, is by the country. How about leaders? If there's a particular leader that you are really fond of, affectionate about, if it's, for example, this Louis Philippe of France, wasn't necessarily a good guy, but he certainly had a lot of interesting times when he was the leader of France. There are tons of Louis Philippe pieces out there. This is example, again, Queen Victoria of England. Here's an example that's kind of neat. That's Napoleon Bonaparte. This is actually a Napoleonic piece from 1811. So if there's a particular ruler that you're fascinated with, that you like to study, chances are there's a crown out there that has them on them. How about denomination? If you like silver dollars, if you like the dollar denomination, here is a British trade dollar with a $1 denomination. If you like crowns, if you like 8 reales, you've got all sorts of different examples that you can collect by denomination. Really, this is one of the most fascinating ways to collect silver. If you, on your personal silver journey, have decided that, maybe those 1 ounce 999 silver rounds or those 1 ounce 999 silver coins are just too sterile for you, I kind of feel like every once in a while you need to get your hands on your silver. And you can really do that with these pieces. You don't have to worry so much when you're talking about the average circulated condition of these ones. You don't have to worry about that really fine, high quality proof finish, getting a fingerprint on it by accident, or maybe leaving a fingerprint or a small scratch on a really expensive, valuable piece of numismatic coinage. That's not really what these pieces are. So cheap, plentiful, collectible. Do they have drawbacks? Yeah, they've got some drawbacks. Let's be honest about it. The fact that they are not an easy fraction of a 1 troy ounce increment, the fact that they are not 999 pure silver, especially in the last 10-15 years, that really seems to be the focus of a lot of people who are stacking silver. And because of that, they may be easy to buy, but they may be somewhat difficult to sell. I mean, frankly, the chance of your local dealer being an expert on Napoleonic coinage, seems kind of slim. So just go in with your eyes open. Understand that you're not going to make $1 million off of buying average circulated pieces from France from the 1800s. These are really just an interesting way to really spice up your stack if you feel you want to. And again, if you like those 1 ounce pieces that are 999 silver, I totally get it. Your personal journey has led you in that direction. Don't feel bad about not wanting these, but man, look at all the history. Look at what you can grab with your own hands and not worry about with pieces like this. I think they're just so much fun, and they really spark my enthusiasm, my imagination. We talked about this Napoleonic piece. Let's just look at a few of these close up. So this isn't from France, believe it or not. This is actually from the Napoleonic Kingdom of Italy. It was the upper 1/3 of the northern 1/3 of Italy that became kind of a princely state of Napoleon while he was in power. 1811, it was a mintage of about 2.8 million pieces, so they made quite a few of these. 25 grams of 900 silver. Again, the French pieces, typically part of that Latin monetary union system that we've talked about when we've talked about some of the gold coins out there. They had standardized weights and purities for their gold coins, but they also had standard weights and purities for their corresponding silver coins. So that's a fun way to think of it too. If you like the Latin monetary union pieces, if you like the gold pieces of a country, maybe consider the silver pieces that were kind of supporting those gold pieces too. That's a fun way to look at it. The actual silver weight of this piece, it is .7234 of a troy ounce, so just shy of 3/4 of a troy ounce, 900 silver. The value today in silver value, as I'm filming this, $17.18. Now, you're not going to pay $17.18 for it, but could you find one in one of your dealer's trays of pieces that they have like this for $25? You might be able to, maybe $30, and I think that's a really interesting option. That's a really neat buy. Some other examples here. We talked about some of the German pieces. This is an 1888, I believe, dated. There we go, right off to the side here. German piece, but this is actually kind of a German-Prussian thing. You can see it says Deutsches Reich, the German kingdom. 5 Mark, that means 5 marks, the mark, the standard of currency during this period of time. And again, it's not a 1 mark coin. This is a 5 mark coin. So that would be the standard unit of transaction that they would have representing these larger size silver coins. If you are of German ancestry, if you like this period of time in Germany, it's a really neat piece to own. Mintage on this one, 56,204. That's a pretty small mintage, right? I doubt that I paid more than $6 or $8 more than the silver value for this piece. It is 27.777 grams. I like that weight of 900 silver. So the actual silver weight on this piece, 0.8037. So a little bit heavier than the Napoleonic piece that we just looked at. Its value today in silver alone, $19.09. One other example, this is that Ottoman piece, the Egyptian piece that I picked up earlier. Mintage of about 600,000 pieces, 28 grams, but the silver is a slightly lower purity. This is 0.833 fine, so 83.3% pure. Actual silver weight on it is 0.7499 of a troy ounce. Man, you can't get much closer to 3/4 of a troy ounce than 0.7499. So there you have it. It's about 3/4 of a troy ounce of pure silver in the form of a coin that is 0.833 or 83.3% fine. Silver value today, $17.76. So just a few examples. There are some other interesting pieces here, and here's a great example. This is Charles II piece from the UK. How old do you think this piece is? Believe it or not, this one is dated 1673 rather, 1673. You see the date up there? So this is a, 350 something year old coin. I paid a little bit more for this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the fact that you can have a piece of silver in your collection that is hundreds of years old for not a really big amount of money, it's definitely an appealing thing, isn't it? Remember, though, that exit strategy. Always be looking at that exit strategy. Easier to get into, probably a little bit more difficult to get out of. Crowns. I think they're really cool. What do I look for in crowns? I think with these pieces especially, I have kind of a sliding scale when it comes to the quality that I look for. So is the piece a really old piece, or is it a really interesting piece? The older it is, the more forgiving that I am. We talked about this piece just a moment ago. It's got some condition issues. This is it's several hundred years old. It looks like it's been maybe wiped at some time in the past. You can see the luster there is a little bit odd looking. Not unusual for a piece of silver to have been cleaned at some point in its hundreds of years of history. So on this piece, because it's got those kind of unidirectional lines, probably been wiped at some point, cleaned. Wiped is just kind of literally wiped with some kind of a cloth. Also looks like some kind of a punch here on his hair right there. Doesn't bother me. This piece is old enough that I expect it to have some character, and I don't want these pieces to be locked in a plastic slab somewhere where I can never touch them and hold them in my hand. This is one of those cases where I think that's kind of a fun thing to do. I've talked about the 8 reales a lot before. I'm a huge fan of these. It's that whole pirate treasure, American influence that we use these. They circulated in the US up until 1857. So pieces like that, a little bit crusty, I don't mind that. In fact, I think that's kind of charming, and it's one of the things that I like about these pieces. Again, that sliding scale with condition. If it was a newer piece, I would expect it to be AU to BU on the Sheldon scale. That is maybe 50 to 62, 63, somewhere in there. But I like the older pieces, so I'm a little bit more forgiving with the condition of them. And by the same token, pun intended, I'm fine with paying a little bit more on a sliding scale. So the newer pieces, and by newer, for me at least on my journey, I don't really look for these pieces that are any newer than maybe 100 years old. In fact, really something from the 1900s doesn't thrill me because I'm something from the 1900s. So I would much rather have something from the 1800s or even earlier. And because of that, I'm willing to pay maybe a little bit more. Some of these pieces I paid melt for. Some of these pieces I paid $5 or $8 over melt. But some of the older pieces, some of the more interesting pieces, this is a George III crown from England. Does that name sound familiar to you? Yeah, he's the bad guy that we beat in the Revolutionary War. So this is one of his pieces from 1819. You can see there below. Am I willing to pay more than the silver value to have one of these in my little stack of silver crowns? Absolutely. So for pieces like this, or the earlier crown that I showed, would I pay double the melt value? Yes, absolutely. If these are $20 in silver value roughly, would I pay $40 for it? Definitely. Would I pay $60 for it? Maybe not quite as certain about that. So anything over maybe 2.5, 3 times their melt value, it starts to lose interest for me. If I'm going to pick up these interesting pieces, part of the interest is being able to get them at a pretty good price. And when you have to start paying a premium for them, if I'm going to pay $100, $150 for these, I've got other things I'd rather spend my money on. So it comes down to how interesting is it for you? Is it worth it for you? I think with certain pieces, double, maybe triple their silver value, but you're still talking somewhere in that $50, $60 range. They're still not outrageous. So that was kind of the things that I look for. Cost on a sliding scale, condition on a sliding scale, with the exceptions of those really older pieces. And I like older pieces. Keep in mind that, your exit strategy on these are going to be a little bit more difficult. For storage of some pieces like these, once in a while, the better pieces maybe go into a non-PVC 2x2 flip like this one here. But for the most part, these pieces just go into a tube and they sit on my desk. And when I'm feeling down a little bit or I need a little pick-me-up, I just grab hold of these. This is a kind of a generic Silver Eagle, US Silver Eagle tube. And this holds almost all of these crowns that you see here before you. So just pull them and put them into the tube, and they sit there and they kind of look at you and make your day go by a little bit better. One thing I did want to point out, this piece that we originally pulled that was Charlie's ticket to his golden ticket is a Maria Theresa Thaler. We've talked about Maria Theresa a lot. This is an Austrian piece, and you see the date here, 1780. I don't want to say don't be fooled by that, but these are restrikes. So they are making them to this day with that 1780 date on them. So just because you have one dated 1780 doesn't mean it's that old. In fact, it's almost certainly not that old. Most of these probably made within the last 30 or 40 years, but they always have that exact same 1780 date on them. Crowns. Silver crowns. How much fun is that? How much more interesting can you get numismatically? A way to add to your silver stack if you want to without breaking the bank. For me, when I buy a new coin, it is usually a very nice coin. It has to be something very specific that I'm looking for. But things like crowns allow me to continue to buy silver coins without feeling like I'm really buying a coin. It's really more of a silver stacking vehicle for me. So this is a fun way to really add spice to a collection, and I think it's a really interesting thing. What do you think? Do you like crowns? Do you want crowns? Are they part of your stack? Would you like them to be? Does it not make sense to you? Why would you want something that is not a 1 ounce 999 silver vehicle? Or do you think that kind of adds a little bit of interest to your silver stack? Leave a comment down below. I'd like to know. If you have suggestions for other videos you'd like to see me make, by all means, leave a comment down below. Been getting some really interesting suggestions recently, and I've been looking through my pieces to see if I can pull together enough information to come up with a video. So if there's something out there that you would really like to see me make, leave a comment. And the worst that that can happen is I can say, I just don't have enough information about that, but I'll probably make it up if you don't mind. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It's important to get the algorithms working so that other people who love these kinds of things can find these videos. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.